This evening, it is our pleasure and privilege to host Madhubhashini Dissanayake Ratnayake on the British Council Libraries in Conversation with series. Madhu is the former head and a senior lecturer in the Department of English Language Teaching, University of Sri Jayewardenepura. She has a master's degree from New York University in English and American literature with a special focus on creative writing. She has just submitted her doctoral thesis to Hitotsubashi University, Tokyo. Madhu, I hope I said that correctly. Madhu won the Gratian Prize awarded by the Gratian Trust, established by Michael Ondaatje for the best creative work in English by a resident Sri Lankan writer for the year 2011 for her novel, There Is Something I Have to Tell You, having been shortlisted for it twice for her short story collections. She has won the State Literary Prize for her short story collection Driftwood in 1991. And now she has won the State Literary Award 2020 for the best translation of a novel from Sinhala to English for the Sewing Festival, a translation of Somaratna Balasuriya's Vakmagula. She has also written books for learners of English as a second language, a five-book set of trilingual readers for children, a book that teaches grammar through literature, and a memoir of her time as head English language teaching unit at the University of Sri Jayewardenepura. She edited a monthly creative writing page named 100 Words for the Sunday Times newspaper from 1997 to 2018, a flash fiction page, and a learning English page in the Sunday Times for a few years, and has conducted language lessons in Sinhala newspapers to teach English through literature in translation. She created in July 2021 a platform called the Bhasha Buddies to bring together people who are proficient in English with those who are not, to provide for language learning through the provision of a space to practice the language through one-to-one texting and subsequently conversing together on a digital platform, all administered through the University of Sri Jayewardenepura. In 2017, she was awarded the title of Kala Kirti by the President of Sri Lanka. Madhu, welcome back to the British Council and congratulations from us all on your wonderful achievements.
Thank you very much, Nali.
Okay, now I know we have a lot to get to, so I'm going to begin with this one particular achievement of the State Award for the Best Translation of a Novel from Sinhala to English. Why do you think translations are so important, apart from the obvious reason of accessibility?
Okay. We live in a multi-ethnic country, Nadi, and I feel from very young days, I felt that the understanding between different cultures is very little. For example, I still have not read the Sri Lankan Tamil writers. Most of us are not trilingual, not even bilingual. Most of us are monolingual. And we have ethnic tensions. So in such a country, I would say one of the primary objectives of the education system should have been to make us trilingual. But that did not happen, right? So one thing in which people can make amends in one way is probably only through translations, and particularly of the good fiction, because literature is one area in which you get closer to the souls of the people, not the politics, not the the slogans. Somebody quietly writing might give you an insight which nothing else does. And I love books for that reason. It's a very quiet thing. It's not no fair, no media celebration. It's just a quiet thing which is very powerful. That is why I have always wanted to do translations. And when I say different worlds, I don't only mean the Sinhala and Tamil, because I distinctly feel that the English-speaking world is another world of its own. So in some way, if I can bring these worlds to, one of my lasting regrets is that I don't know Tamil, but at least because I'm bilingual in Sinhala and English, at least to bring those worlds together, I can try through my
Okay, but
translation.
given that readership in English in Sri Lanka is still very limited to a relatively small population, so these were your motivations, was it, in making, I mean, in expending this huge time and effort in making a translation?
Yes, I think Nadi, if you take the minority who reads in Tamil, they might read an English translation quicker than the Sinhala, right? There's always hope that somebody outside might pick it up as well. We have a huge diaspora out there, right? And one way of showing them the way that some single people think is very important, because that might not be what's caught in the media. And this ties to publication. The really thing that can happen or should happen if an international publishing house picks it up. So we live when you're publisher, it's a very limited number who reads it. So I think even publisher here knew he was running a financial risk. I'm pretty sure he did it because it was important. But if you want to take, just profit, I don't think it's profitable, because very few would, they'll read the Sinhala novel, and it take very few people really cares about the native tongue to go buy a translation. But my point is, forget the market issues. I was lucky to find a publisher who thought so. Apart from that value, there is another kind of a national value in having some things documented. So that is what I. That now I also say Bap Magule translated before. It was out of, but this is second. But because of the state award, it got a little bit more attention. It doesn't necessarily mean mine was better. It just got more attention. Yes.
So before we get into the book, I would like you to share some insights into the process of translation, Madhu, because I'm always grateful for the enormous effort it must take to make translations. I mean, because we read South American authors, right, and French authors because they have been translated into English, because I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese or any of those, or Russian authors.
Murakami writes in Japanese.
Murakami is Japanese. But something I noticed when I read translations is I'm assuming that the contours and the cadences that I hear are of the original author. So how do you do that when you are translating into another language?
Okay, I think something which is happening now, Nali, which may not have happened traditionally some time ago. If you, for example, read the young African women writers like Chimamanda or Forna, they get the African nuances into English, so that once whenever you yourself, for example, this is very Sri Lankan, and have something similar, and they consciously put it in. So by the time you're halfway through the novel, you know the fluctuations and the music of that. And I think that's a very important thing to do, because the idea is not to make us all uniform. I mean, I'm talking in the British Council channel. The idea is not the same English. I think you will be the first to. The council itself will know there are so many nuances, so many differences which should be celebrated. So the idea is not to make it a flat, not that English is flat in any way, but the Scottish, Irish, African, Sri Lankan, Indian, they'll have their little, the little inflections, which are very important. So when I translate, it's simply impossible to translate. For example, this novel that was titled Pandurugasa Kirivedila. I mean, how?
Yeah.
The concept. See, translations is never word to word.
Okay.
It's always concept.
Right.
So, Kiri, the concept is very Sri Lankan. And if the concept does not exist in the target language, which is English, it's very difficult to translate. You can, but you'll probably not get the connotation, the feeling that someone gets when they talk about it. So those are the very famous saying, poetry is what is lost in translation. You can take the words, but the poetry of it
Yeah.
might not get captured. Because I also teach translation sometimes, I can also say this. Yes, you lose something,
Right.
but you can also gain something.
Right.
Right? And what is gained may not have been in the original, but you can carry it. So if you read this novel, I would Peter a Mama,
Yeah.
I would have Peter a Mama. Because Peter Uncle would have been Peter is a
Yeah.
Sinhalized version of
Peter. Yeah.
you carry because you're like, but only a Sri Lankan Sinhala person reading it would know what the Peter a Mama meant. So there's if I were to publish this saying in India or England, I would probably then have a footnote or something saying because they'll say Mama,
Yeah.
M-A-M-A.
Yeah. So will you?
So they might have gone
So
to
will you actually if a book, I mean not only just this book, but if a book does get picked up like that, do you go back and revisit it and rewrite some other things so that it will better suit a more international audience?
I think so, Nadi, because it's again about
Yeah.
power. I doubt that somebody in the centers might look up to see what a Hansi Putua is.
Right.
Right? Hansi, I mean, it's not an armchair, no. The moment I say Hansi Putua in Sinhala, so many images come, no? We can think of a temple declining, the old bungalows, the Wala
Yes.
Uvers. So I might use a footnote.
Okay.
But not, I would be very stuck. Like for my novel that you mentioned, I kept on using Hansi Putua.
Right.
The priest was in Hansi Putua.
Right.
Because the monk was in an armchair would make sense, but I'm hoping somebody will do the homework and look at the footnote. The reason I said it's about power is, like, for example, we learn daffodils, right? When we learn poetry,
Yeah.
I mean, none of us in a daffodil, we'll never see a daffodil unless we travel to England or
Right.
whatever. But we look it up. So,
but I think in all
so
fairness, I think audiences are more, because there's Google now and there's all of that. I think audiences are
now,
more curious and it's easier than when we were
absolutely.
growing up. I mean, to access that kind of research was, I mean, you had to get to a library, but now it's there. So
Things are changing.
yeah.
Yeah. So things are changing. Internet, the internet has made the world so
Correct.
much smaller. So that when you say that, you can, anyone in rural Sri Lanka can just look down at the phone and learn about it. So things are changing. The power dynamics are also changing a little
But
bit.
Madhu, you're no stranger to translation. So what is your process? I mean, how do you speak to the author or do you not? Or what is your process like?
Very much linked to the author. I first translate a draft, then I polish it up, I send it to him or her, and then we have a discussion on. The reason I can answer this so quickly is that my last 4 years I was doing my PhD and I had analyzed Sinhala and English fiction writers post-war. And I also on the side did a collection of translation, which hopefully it's very slow, an international publisher might bring out. Okay, so that was one of the best things that happened during my PhD. But every step of the way, I was in touch with the writer because I asked him. They read it. They got back to me and said, maybe this is what I meant to say. Then I changed it. It was never a one-way process. It was always a two-way process.
So are you saying that you wouldn't attempt to translate an author who is no longer living? Would that be?
Oh, I
would. Okay.
No, I definitely would. It's just that that's just etiquette.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
But had it been somebody, who is not living anymore, I mean, I wouldn't have. It wasn't a matter of confidence. It was a matter of trying to make it a combined thing.
Okay.
Because when I write as me, it's me. But now I'm taking somebody else's thing.
Correct.
So I need communication, and I'm also going to start, since I'm like at the end of my PhD, going to start a series I had done in the 80s called Panghindi, which I had, I had every month a newspaper carried a translated short story. Now that's going to come back again. And now, because I'm older, I know less than I ever did before. I'm sure that I talk to the writer. When you're young, you're so confident, no? Like, everything.
Yeah.
I am now more aware of how important to realize that you may be wrong is. So I talk to the writers all the time.
Yeah, but I'm very curious. I always wonder how how people have translated the Greek and the Roman texts, and it must be, it must be so challenging, because you don't have that luxury. So, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
so I was,
that's a
that's a
different
different,
thing. Like, for example, Bali, that's a skill, that's a particular
correct.
discipline. Like, for me, what I do, it's such a live process because so if I was to do Pali translations, the answers would be
Right,
very
right,
different. It'll be going to different ones, it'll be a more paper oriented thing.
right.
But mine is absolute live stuff because some of the things I'm translating are very much to this day relevant.
Right.
So it's not a
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're saying.
thing that is.
Yeah. Okay, so I also want to ask you, what impact has this particular state award had on promoting this cross-lingual accessibility and creating interest?
Now that's a difficult question because these awards have been given every year.
Okay.
I have not really seen any world becoming closer because of that, sadly. Because we tend to be pretty insular, I think, between the English speaking, English writing world and the Sinhala speaking and the Sinhala writing world. They survive very well without each other. So it's a bit pessimistic, but I doubt that just because something won the award, yes, about 10 people might pick it up. But it's not going to do a paradigmatic change. That's the pity of it.
So who did you see as your readership then?
Not really. It's the desire in me to know that it has to be said in a language in which many people have access to it. So whether Sri Lanka or one day somewhere in the world, that doesn't matter. Because now the creative process and privilege this has to go on despite the economics.
I completely agree.
Because
yes. You can't create thinking of, yeah.
No, the neoliberal forces will make sure that what is out there produced is what sells.
Yeah.
That's like hugely thinking
Right.
to art. So it again a privileged position for me not to care. And the publisher being a friend, no problem. But I don't think he's going to make a profit. I really don't. So that it's documented. If somebody wants to know what somebody in like the 1980s thought, it's there in English. Yeah. So he died. All of us die without doing it. Now, who then? We need to document things without thinking of the market forces because increasingly what sells may not be what the best is for the world. I might sound very puritanical when I say it, but the neoliberal forces are that. They will make sure what is out there suits a particular ideology. And the others are wiped off as not being relevant. It will be only or maybe the educated who have the power to say no will do it anyway. So it's that.
Can I take you to the book itself? This is Somaratna Balasuriya, right? His name is Vap Magula. And that is your translation. So I read in the preface to the book that this particular book, Vap Magula, which was published in 1988, really moved you then. So that was quite a while ago. Can you tell us something about the book and why you wanted to make a translation of this particular book?
Okay, so when I read it, there are books, Nali, that you read and you never forget. I used to be in school. I don't think I was a very popular person. I was very much to myself. So books were my friends. I had one close friend, that's it. So I used to read voraciously at home. Library, you would remember library, and Miss Nimala, it was like a haven. So reading is was quite broad, and there were some books I will never forget reading, never. And if I collect anything in this world, it's books. So even now I might read Watership Down on a gloomy day because I remember the joy it brought me. Those I don't forget. And Lord of the Rings, forget the film, the book had such an impact that I couldn't come out of that universe for a couple of months.
Yes, I know that feeling.
So
Yes. Yeah.
I used to be impressed of the fact that I was on Earth, only among men. You can just touch the
Yeah.
book. It's weird like that. So there were some Sinhala books you read and you never forgot.
Okay.
Because it showed, especially in Ali, like, living in Colombo, growing up in Colombo, we are extremely privileged not to see how people in other parts of this country live. Right? And Sinhala writers see that. I see that because I teach in campus. Right? But some of us don't, especially those who read and write in English. And this made such an impact because far back as that time, and I must talk about writer Somaratna Balasuri. I have his short story collection, Karatya. This was amazingly good, Nali, this short story collection.
Okay.
Right? Somaratna Balasuri translates from French. Inspired very... he's a slow producing person. I think after this sewing festival, his other novel came only last year, Muktiya.
Okay.
For about 30 years, 2 novels. And this Karatya, I wish I could do this as it's amazingly good. Right? He saw in the 80s what image will do one day in the future. And he picked one event, Vapmagula, where, the old kings are supposed to come symbolically touch the Nagula. I have never read a Sinhala writer who could write of such serious things with such humor. It was hilarious, at the same time heartbreaking. Now, when I do that, Nali, I think the humor really comes out in the Sinhala, the quick ways he uses the language. Right? And like, for example, they filled in a paddy field to make a row of bathrooms for the VIP officers to sit. And the who wails, because her paddy field got filled, said in Sinhala, it doesn't sound very good, but he said, what's wrong with your stomachs that you can't go wait without using a bathroom for 2 hours? So it's pretty funny in Sinhala because the way she says it. Hard and funny. So it takes an enormously skilled writer to do that, to have sarcasm, irony, humor. And like how they brought the ambula. Ambula is the breakfast. So they said these damsels were carrying the ambula, holding it with one finger, and 10 minutes later they could see the workers carry the heavy saucepans to the kitchen. So lightly how that was empty and how the real work is done by workers and not those models. So the craft hit me. I didn't know it was craft then. And the content. And then, I mean, and I translated this just a few years ago, you realize how true that was, how much image plays a part in our politics. I would say now it's nothing but
in our lives. I mean, it's leave everything. It's just in our lives. Yeah.
In lives, Nali, at least it's a personal tragedy.
Yeah.
When it's politics, it becomes a national tragedy.
Yeah.
That's why I thought this is more current now than anything else. And now because of the profuse, the enormous number of TV channels that have come up, it's easier to spread the image. Possibly the lie. So we are all caught, and then we go and vote.
So this moved in 1988 as a child, as a relatively young person.
So, hold on. So my thoughts are as a 50-year-old woman.
Okay, fine.
The impact of the child. So that's why I translated it in these, like the present context, because now I could analyze it much better. As a child, it was just the impact.
Okay. So sorry, Madhu, I just wanted sorry, go on. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
When I wanted to translate, I wanted to pick something that meant a lot. And I remember.
Right. Yeah. Because I was wondering whether there was not something else that moved you. I mean, we have had other writers and all of that you probably read as a young person, but you picked this. So,
Nali, if you watch the Sinhala channels, you would realize why it had to be said.
Okay.
Especially the news channel.
Talking about Sinhala, I think in your translation also you have tried to keep like you were talking about those South African writers, you try to keep the sound of the Sinhala sort of. I've said Sinhala-ness, and I think you'll scold me for using such a word. But how do you do that? Because, or is it because I speak Sinhalese that I could hear it?
Yeah, because somebody else who doesn't know Sinhala might find it a very strange way of saying some things. But if I have used it consistently, they'll figure out that this is something we say. For example, no. So that is there. We don't know Nali. So because we are in this context, we can't say how a person outside will read it.
But how conscious were you of that? I mean, did you do that deliberately?
I think so, but I think there's always a price I pay for it. Because my novel could have been judged, not maybe by the Gratian, but maybe other traditional writers who say these are not standard ways of using the language. It could have been. What I'm saying is there's always a price to pay, depending on who judges it or who's valuing it. It depends whether you want to. I don't think I'm even aware. Honestly, I don't. I think it is my use of language.
Okay.
This is how I speak. It is how I don't purposely do a non-English accent. This is how I speak.
Right.
So I would say, answer, probably unconscious.
Interesting, because this is like the inside workings of a translation. So it's a Sri Lankan book. So I want to take you to your writing now, because you are an accomplished and a very successful writer, and you have been writing. I don't think it's any surprise, Madhu, given your family background and how inspirational your parents have been to generations of us. From a very young age, I think I remember you writing when you were in your teens, maybe. So what has been your most fertile ground for your stories, for tales to tell?
Reading, I think, Nali. I think anyone who tries without reading the books is not going to. Look, I have huge problems with very successful. Okay, I'm still very much on the beginnings of that journey, right? And I know I'll probably never get there before I die,
Yes.
but the joy is the journey. Okay, so absolutely not. I think we all. I know this for a fact because when I read the Sinhala writers, and me being an English writer, I know how, I'm sorry, but they're light years ahead of us, right? And because we are such a small crowd, it's very easy for us to become kind of well known. It doesn't mean we are great writers. Though I do think there are really good writers among the English writers here.
Yeah.
Right? And there are them down. But what I'm saying is it's easy to become famous in Sri Lanka when you write in English. Simply because there are so few of us. And one of us wins the Gratian because, come on, there's not many who write. But in the Sinhala case, there's so many good writers. And I'm saying this without putting my English writers down because there are really good writers among them as well, right? So, what was the question now?
No,
what did you exactly?
Where do you find the story to tell? And
life, no?
Okay, but I think also it's a little unfair to say that people writing in English have a bit of a head start for fame and fortune, because it's still a huge effort. It's still such a labor of love, and
absolutely.
Putting creative work out there, you can always get shot down. I mean, I know from personal experience. So it can be very daunting and very painful. And kudos to anybody who does it, But I suppose what you say is correct in that it's a smaller group.
It's a smaller group. In Sinhala, we have this, the Kiyamanane, Lula Nati Valata Kanaya Panditya.
I think I remember.
So it's a bit mean. I'm putting myself also into that pool.
I know. But I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone who wants to. Journey of writing in English, because
please do, because the more we realize how far we have to go, the better we will be. Because I think we'll all die as writers, and the writers will understand this. If we ever think, my goodness, I have arrived,
yeah,
Nali, that's the point of death. because every time I read something I have written, you want to groan. And I know, like, I had, when I wrote my novel, I had Michael Ondaatje in my bag everywhere I traveled in New York. Okay. For me to imagine I'll reach that is okay. That's, but I did imagine. So that even if I went 10% of the journey, it's still worth going. Okay. The English Patient is for me like a Bible. Not the film, the book. So you need to look up. You need to know there is far to go. Because if we don't do that, if, as educators, as teachers, if we think we know everything or that we have arrived, I think that's a very dangerous point any artist can go to. Not to feel inferior, but to feel excited about the journey you still have to take.
Right.
What's the point? Like, when we reach an end, for me, that's death. If I come to a point where I say, oh, everything is done now, we can relax, I would say that's the day I'll be dead, probably.
But okay, you said life is your ground of looking for subject matter or stories to tell. But what aspects of life have really moved you enough to want to write something about it?
I would say, Nali, my life has been pretty privileged and protected. So I'll be lying if I say these are experiences I have gone through. Right? For example, my novel is very much about the JVP movement. Yes, I saw it because my father was in the campus when thing was, exploding there. But it is also imagination. Right. You could see it and in the rest. So my novel is actually the bomb that went off in a Shah Rukh Khan concert, and I imagined it backwards, 20 years backwards. You must not forget the craft involved in writing. So that's one of the things I think we should remember. It doesn't have to be life. Right. That's what you're a writer. Right. That you take a seed, make it grow, and it's a huge tree. And no one will know what the seed is. Because if you know, then you're not writing fiction, you're writing real life.
Right. So how different is the process for you from writing and translating? How much of your creativity do you allow it?
You can't even compare, Nali. No. For me, translation is just a craft.
Okay.
And that was your heart gets involved. But my own writing involves my heart in a very, very serious fashion. So I wouldn't even compare the two. Writing my own stuff is very much harder. Translation, I can look and immediately translate it into English and then revise 20 times. That's a different thing. But for me, it's the same because I'm very bilingual.
So it's
unless it's a very complicated writer, for example, P.R. Karyavasam or someone, I needed to solve the enormous amount of stuff he said in one sentence. So then you break. But it's for me very much a craft thing, translation. Whereas my own writing involves my own passions and my heart and everything else. Two very different processes.
So
when it comes, I still do craft. When it comes to editing, it's not very different, but the original writing is.
So I'm sure you have loads of students that you have guided along the way and you have done all these workshops. What advice do you give people who want to write, who want to write in English and become part of that group?
Yeah. But funny my answer, because one of my desires after I finish my PhD is to actually start a creative writing program in this country, which doesn't have one. I mean, I have done workshops, Nali, but I have not guided anyone anywhere because of one-time thing. You don't do it. But if I work, first thing I'll say is it can't be taught. You can't teach someone to be a writer. You can teach someone to be a good craftsman. You can give pointers, which may have, this is something that Shyam Selvadurai said. He also went through a writing program. You might get pointers that would have taken you 10 years to find.
Okay.
So it makes a program. I do think creative writing classes mean a lot. It gives you skill in craft, whereas very much people think it's about the heart. No, yes. But after a point, once everything is poured down, shut your heart out and get your brain working and edit. Those things a creative writing program can do. So I think I hope I shall succeed in. I love the fact that I'm working at Sri Jayawardhanapura University because it gives a lot of freedom for new ideas. Like the Bhasha Buddy project that you mentioned. It allows people to be innovative. and innovation is incredibly important in our education system. So I'm hoping that I might be able to start at some point a creative writing program here.
Yeah, I think I listened to an author speak about the writing process, and he said the hardest challenge is not to be in love with what you have written. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so
We- no, it mixes between love and hate. Sometimes you read what you write and you just want to either burn everything down or bash your head into something, because honestly, it's for me it's very
right.
painful. So every time I read my own writing, because you become older, no? Now it's always a looking back at a
Yeah,
younger
yeah,
self.
yeah. And yeah, and the younger self never kind of quite measures up, and the older person is very critical, and yeah, it's that huge dilemma that comes out. But
Yeah.
I want to talk also about, because you brought up this whole bilingual thing, and about language. I suppose you, more than most people, are you know how powerful English has been on lifestyles and careers. What would you like to say about your efforts, Madhu, in sort of closing that gap and bringing those privileges and opening those doors with English to more people?
Okay. See, Nali, there are a lot of us working in this field, and there are researchers much better than me who have theorized on, what's going on. So, Professor Arjuna Parakrama's Dehegemonizing Language Standards, book, Tirukandaya, what he writes, and people like Mukwella or, Raihana Rahim, all these
Right,
people have worked in this within the English language field, right? There's very little any one of us can do, even if we spent a lifetime trying to, bring these worlds closer. So what I have done trying to do within my lifestyle is still going to be minute, but see, it depends. Think that is better than despairing about the situation, right? Doing something, lighting a candle rather than curse the
mm,
darkness kind of thing. One of the problems I see in Sri Lanka is the classism associated with knowing English. Class is again money,
yeah,
right? And this in coming down for probably from pre-independence time, because we got English through colonial time. So there's a dislike. Not just the native speakers might think these are not our people.
you
Fluent
know,
English speakers,
but everybody needs English now, right? It's a world language. It doesn't. I mean,
yeah, that
everybody
doesn't.
needs it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean the attitude towards it is very positive.
Really?
Simply
Okay.
because it's difficult to access now.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Because of
yeah.
that, things you don't tend to either dislike or ridicule.
Mm,
Okay, so it has not ever been a equal ground where people had equal access to English. It doesn't put the worth of that language down, but the ground hasn't been equal, and that is why in campuses we try to give it. Campuses education is free, and we have always had psychological barriers the students
yeah.
have in either thinking not they don't know grammar, which really doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So all of us who are campuses know that the psychological barriers also that we have to overcome to get them to like the language. And this is why I bring literature in so much.
Mm, mm,
English poetry has so much to give, and they will react whether they know the language or not.
mm, mm,
So I started in the Sunday Times. I did grammar
mm.
through literature. A base grammar, the teacher
Right.
terms. People could connect. I had a girl who used to say she
Mm,
hated English
mm,
too, but she used to, because when this teacher had no talk because she couldn't remember the words, she never went back again. But in my class, we had this session where everybody gave a little speech every day. Everybody couldn't speak every day, but it went in circle. She made that poem. She used it was something like "What is heavy, sea, sand, and sorrow." I can't remember that. It's 4 lines.
okay.
She made it her own and gave another poem in English.
Wow. Yeah.
So imagine that English literature only belongs in English
Right.
departments. For me, was something I believe. Because no, people can react to beauty in whatever language. And if we can just take away the thing that this doesn't belong to us, that needs to be taken away, right? So that is why I've tried to use literature. And during the pandemic, I made it an audio series on YouTube,
Right.
which
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
campus,
Yeah. I've seen it.
I hope to proceed on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping to continue it in English
Right.
now. It was in Sinhala, same things in English, maybe in my own channel where I try to make a community, but those are like future plans.
Right.
And another thing, which I thought was important is, as English teachers, we tell people to practice the language, right? Because it's like learning the violin or learning how to swim. You can learn about it, but unless you actually do it, you don't learn
Right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing we forget is that when you say, you have to use it, the very obvious question is where? Because if you're not within a context of people speaking English, you just don't have a chance to speak English, because you can survive 100% without one word of English being used in
So
this
that's where
country.
your Bhasha Buddies
If
program is. I mean, I'd like you to talk a little
that,
bit about that also, because I think that's a really good idea.
yes. So what happened during a Facebook conversation where this young man who was quite, intelligent kept on answering in Sinhala to my questions, and he could understand my questions perfectly. So at one point I asked, how come you're not even trying
Mm.
to answer in English? Why don't you form a group among your friends? Because I'm pretty senior, I can be
Right.
very scary. No, why don't you form a group among your friends where you practice the language? And he said, I don't have who know English like that. And that's like the 99% of, people trying to learn the language. So I was, at that moment, I called an old student of
Mm.
mine to ask if they would be willing to be that friend, to be that friend. And he said, we can have a buddy network. Because when I was the head of the ELTU Nali, we used to have a society called the English Language Society,
Yes.
where they did many activities.
Right. Yes.
It was just a
Right.
student. One of was the president got people to come in, those who were good in English, to just sit with those who were not so good and chat during lunch hour. They called it lunchtime chats.
Right.
Non-judgment, just chatting away.
Right. Right.
Had a space to
Mm.
practice. No? Not everyone came, but figure the worth of it came.
Mm.
So I was asking a student of mine whether you can transfer that into text level. Whether, without your identity being known, you speak texting.
Mm.
And it's nice now, like those first students are now lecturers themselves, or they are working. And, I could find people. We started with 10, and we officially had the website where the applicants could apply, and we have about 300. The problem is, with 10 you can't. 300 would be after I retire and die also, probably, because we give one applicant 3 months practice. We're trying to now, we are also learning. I'm now realizing that's too long. It can be fast and more intense.
Right.
So things like that we are learning on the job, but there are people who have been with us, have improved. I don't think they improve very much, but at least they know for a couple of, weeks, they could communicate it in English with a human being, not an app. So that they had to maneuver apologies if they didn't come, confidence building. And the beauty is, Nali, now there are nearly 100 buddies across campuses, a network of friends who are anonymously texting people, and some of them are abroad. They do it through a specially constructed FB page.
Right. Okay.
It's possible. We're learning on the job. There are mistakes being made. And one of the saddest things I see is that those who have stuck the longer are pretty good in English when they start with. Those who are really scared don't respond to hello, even if they have applied. So there might be a feeling thinking this is for English, people who know English. But no, it was meant for people who really wasn't really good in English and they wanted help just to improve. So it's a learning thing, and whether they come in time, whether they waste our time, all these are there. But it's a new thing that some of us are trying out. And I'm like thrilled at the fact that there are so many who have applied and so many on this side who are willing to help. Everyone is anonymous. You don't know who you're texting with. Like people I texted with had no idea it was me on this side.
Right. Okay.
So that
Are you allowed to
Yeah.
tell people at some point, this is who I am, and sort of, are you allowed?
No, no. They really realize there's a very senior
Yeah,
person, they would probably say the little they are
right.
saying. So that if they were, so we could see every
Yeah,
nuance of being trust, which may not, they may not have done that if they knew who was on the other side. So we don't want any other dynamics getting there, right? There are heads of departments, there are policymakers now who are Bhasha buddies, but the applicants have no idea who's behind it. And I want it
right.
that way because those dynamics, not, this is just non-judgmental space.
Right. And also just language. It's
So
all about language. It's not about anything
it's
else.
all about,
Yeah.
no, just wish more people who needed help would respond because sometimes even for a hello they don't respond. Admittedly, we get very late approaching the applications opened in July, and there are about 150 people still waiting. So their lives would have changed by the time we come to them, right? And we are learning on the job. We started only with texting, but now we have also gone into speaking. So, right. Nali, do we get chats here on the
Yes,
side?
so there is, I think, I don't know whether
Yeah.
you can go to the public if you want to look, but there is a Mr. Jai Singha, I think. Very useful and valuable
Mm-hmm.
conversation, madam, he says. We have Roberto
Right.
Aguila. Good
Mm-hmm.
conference. I'm from Komaka. My gosh, some very exotic sounding place. I'm very sorry. I don't want to mangle the name of the place. But yes, so we do have a few comments. So Madhu, I want to also, because we are the British Council Library and we are extremely passionate about not only promoting people to engage with the English language, but we want people to read. So what do you tell your students about reading? And like, especially if you are not one of those people who grew up speaking English, how do you encourage people to actually pick up a book and read something in English?
That's for me primary because I know Nali, like a good example I have, I think, mind me saying it, Professor Amarakirti, who is now a professor. He studied, like, he did his PhD in the USA. He learned English through reading. Just that. I mean, he didn't go for class. He just his heart out. So if you have a love of books, and if you actually can use any library, we'll be without a job, right? That's enough. It's just that you need speaking practice, and probably we will help. Reading means so much, and I wish people realize that. And also the British Council, I used to, there are some things psychologically we think we are not part of, but no, anyone should have a right to come and walk into the British Council, and they have the right. Whether they use it or not is something else. So that's why I'm saying it's
Yeah,
half psychological. Going to the British Council doesn't mean that we are traitorous to our own country. No, get the resources there. So that's why I'm saying language learning in this country is very much, you need to know the psychology behind it, so that why people are afraid and why this shouldn't be, and why I think it's very harmful to hold a standard English and say, if you don't have this, don't talk. If you don't have this standard, don't write. Because the process of learning is about making mistakes, right? And unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, again, class and power comes. There are these gatekeeping processes where you use a wrong English word and there's a little look that is exchanged,
but
right?
that is
It is very
only,
hard.
yeah. But I mean, that is so sad because it's a language. If and I mean, at the council, we are hoping with this series of programs where even though we are in lockdown, we hope that people can watch us and feel that the library space is somewhere they can come to when we are open again, and sort of
Yes,
access the physical collection, because we have something for everyone, and it is a very welcoming space. It is, you know,
it is very much.
I-
Now, the thing, it might also be costly for some people. So that is only practical issue, but psychologically there shouldn't be. But Sri Lanka amazingly has some of the best library networks in this
yes.
planet, I think. Every region, district, every village is supposed to have a good library, and we do. So I tell them, just go to libraries. It's there. If you can afford British Council, go there. Because I remember being brought there by my
Yes,
parents.
yes.
you all was somewhere very, very different. And as kids, we were brought there debt free because British Council has because of the the wealth it contains. It's a very beautiful
Yes.
space. With the beanbag and the welcome and the children's. That. So I wish if they could afford that, please come, because it's of course you have to charge money, so that's a different case. But it's very welcoming as a space. And if you can't, there is a public library. Every village has a library. Now I don't know the quality of, but the last about 3 years ago, I spoke at the library conference. I was the plenary speaker. Therefore, I learned about how effective libraries are.
Yeah.
But we need people to get in there. Now with the digital world, I always have a problem when people put down phones, because sometimes kids are actually reading on the phone. Looking at a phone doesn't necessarily mean you're not reading. There are a lot of platforms in which they're actually doing something that people did with books before. So I'm not too sure whether books are going to be as used as before, but I do not think libraries will ever go out of fashion, simply for the like not everyone would books on phones,
Yeah.
right? And having space to just be with books, that effect I have, maybe it's because I'm a writer, I have never had that feeling that you get in a particular place than in a library.
I completely agree with you.
Personally,
Yes.
that's the question. How do you become a writer, a good
Yes.
writer? You read writing. You just read good writing, and like, again, a funny thing that my father says, aim at the stars, because you'll at least hit a coconut tree. So, typical of you to say that, but
The moon even, but the coconut tree is like too close. Please tell him too close.
I usually don't touch it. So, or read. You become a good writer by reading. And also, whoever asked that question, you also observe a lot. I don't have to tell you, if you are going to be a writer, you'll be observing every little detail. Like if you pass a shop, and that's what makes it Sri Lankan writing. Little, like if you pass a shop and you notice those little shampoo sachets hanging like vines in green and orange, write that. You can find the language to write that. It will be so you. It will be so us. Detail. Observe all details. Could be a look, could be the way somebody sits. Observe. So, good writing. This is something we don't do here in Ali, but in New York, I learned this, that you also practice writing like you practice an instrument.
Yeah.
Like 9 to 10, they just write something and throw it away. In this country, if we write something, we will never throw it away. We are like, holy stuff. But they just consider writing a craft. And they used to write reams and just throw. Just to practice description, characterization.
Yeah. So sort of line it up in your brain, sort of, it's like a muscle, like exercising a muscle.
Exactly. In USA, I realized how technical it could also be. The heart is there, of course, but it's also craft. This is something we don't very much concentrate in countries like this. Like, for example, I edit the 100 words. Sometimes they get really annoyed when I edit something. Like, for example, if there's a beautiful thing and an explanation at the end, I think, don't explain, we got it. And if I cut that part, this used to happen at the beginning, it's like, why did you take that? That was the most important line. I just get really annoyed. So now my 100 words, we're starting again in November, Nali. We stopped it till I did my PhD.
Okay.
I put NB, work to page will be edited.
Okay.
So because they think no business touching the holy stuff that comes out. I would also get angry. But the fact is, sometimes we had a really nice lesson. We used to be taught craft in a particular thing. And he used to show us Raymond Carver's published short stories with what he gave into the public.
Okay.
And you realize that the brilliant opening of the short story came 20 pages in his original that the editor had cut.
So you really need... So that's a separate skill.
Yeah,
that's a completely separate skill.
Editing is something else completely. I'm not even sure whether I have it. That's why good publication houses have editors.
Yeah.
They would never let something just go. I wish Sri Lankan publishing houses also had that. They will
Yeah,
check.
yeah. We
They
interviewed
will.
Sam Pereira last month, and he said he edits, and he says he can be very difficult, and people don't like it. But yes, he edits. He said.
And you, Amina herself got her book
Correct.
edited.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's that. Just good that you got it. She got it edited in her Ibn Battuta book. So that's a process of respecting somebody's eye who will make it better. And that again, as a culture, we are not
so
very
to
used
be a good writer, it's like that's also one of the things that you have to be able to let go also of some of what you have written so that somebody else can make it better.
Yeah. Thing is, Nali, here that's not a given. You will have to find your own editor, unless it's Pereira Hussein. You'll have to find your own editor and make sure it's
well, I don't
quality.
know about the other publishing houses. I don't know, but I'm just only mentioning this because he was our guest and he spoke about it. But you probably know better, yeah, because you've had more experience with publishers.
Yeah. I'm sure I will be pretty grumpy as well if somebody tried to meddle with my novel. Though I'm preaching like this now.
I think I would be extremely grumpy.
But now
So, okay.
Sorry. But I translation anthology will come out. You are meant to, in my contract that I signed, it meant that you're supposed to work with an editor who will make sure the best version comes out. Right. So I can foresee, pulling and pushing going on there, probably, but not, yeah. But that is necessary so that both of you will come to some, I still haven't started that process at all, but it's
okay.
You've got to respect.
So, I think we've covered the questions from the chat, but I just want to ask you, how do you deal with negative responses to your work?
I don't deal with them.
You ignore it?
Its ego is very... Yeah, even I'm very active on Facebook now, but the stupidest thing would be to engage in it, no? Because not everyone will think like you, and it's stupid to expect that. Even my YouTube videos, there are comments below. I sometimes don't look. I mean, some are just saying thank you, madam, and all that. But there are one or two that you wonder why, if you're doing it for them, like somebody said, this is Akuru, Hakuru again, and who and all that. I'm like,
so you don't
you can't.
I always wonder how writers cope with that, because not everybody is going to like what you write.
No. I don't know. I would probably move on. I mean, in anything, no one is going to be beyond blame. No one should assume that they are beyond blame either. Right? And the only way that you can keep doing what you think is correct is to not take it too seriously, Nali. Because we are all doing the best we can, no?
Yes, of course.
So that is important because negativity does hit you very much. I mean, I'll be lying if I say it doesn't matter. It hurts, right? But then you decide, then because I also think, being hurt, being sad, being depressed, being like, what am I doing? Is part of life, no? We very often try to think it shouldn't be that, but no, I know it's for everything that's very much a process.
I asked the question because I'm thinking in terms of writers who write and who get rejected time and again, and who don't get the opportunities to have their work read by many people. So, as an encouragement to them, also, I was just wondering how,
If I were to talk to young people, my answers would be a bit different. Because, for example, R.K. Narayan, who became one of the first well-known writers of India, global name, 30 publishing houses, I think, had rejected his first novel. 30. Swami and Friends or something. Right? He just kept on going. So, but that also doesn't mean that everything will always have a happy ending. But for them, I would say, if you're enjoying the journey, the heartbreak is part of it. Don't reject it, because I would say a life with just pure happiness might be a bit boring at some point. No, I don't know. I've never had it. But what I'm saying is it's part of the journey. You've got to take it because, yeah.
Thank you, Madhu. I think that's... Sorry?
you keep writing. If you're a writer, you will keep writing. You can't not, no matter what everyone says. But also remember, some of those negative comments are your teachers. Huh?
Correct.
That's exactly how you should be looking at. Because a friend who praises you, fine, great, your ego just puffs up, but you might not learn anything. And I've always felt that those who scold or criticize you, look at that close, because they might be the best teacher. So you need to be aware. I realize that I've been pulled up, but I've learned the best lessons in my career, in my life, when that has happened. Very bad for your ego. Like, and you're angry at first, but you got to, I don't know, I think it's very much about the ego, Nali. And as a Buddhist, I know that plays a part in everything and can sometimes be very, once you, not that I have, but once you learn to let it go, things become very much easier. And you just do the good you think you can, even with the Bhasha buddies, even with my YouTube, to put yourself out there trying to teach, bit of a ridiculous thing, no? If you look at it, it's so much easier to be in cocoon doing nothing.
No, it's not ridiculous. I'm very grateful to all the people who make the effort and who put themselves out there. I've only admiration for, the effort. And thank you, Madhu. It was wonderful, and we are happy that we have been able to be part of your journey. As you said, it's not the destination, it's the journey. It's that whole experience. So thank you very much for being our guest. And I'm really looking forward to, oh, okay, we've got another comment that says very interesting and informative. Thank you, Madhu, for taking the time and really for sort of opening up and talking about different aspects of your work and writing and all of that. I hope more people are inspired to sort of approach a translation, maybe either to read one or to attempt one, because I think even attempting a translation is a wonderful exercise in writing, because you're trying to sort of talk about through with somebody else's voice. So I think there's lots of different colors there that people can explore. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone who tuned in to watch us and listen to us. Thank you to Shiroma and Udani. Udani handled the back end and she's done a wonderful job. Thank you so much. For those who like a traditional feel of a book in their hands, we have an online book ordering facility. Madhu was talking about going to the library. Hopefully, when this COVID situation improves and the library opens again, you can come back to that. We also have a absolutely brilliant collection in our digital library. We have everything. We have movies, music, books, magazines, everything. So that's something to explore. If you can go on our website and explore that. So good night, Madhu. Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening and good night, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone, Ali and the British Council for having me.
Thanks, Madhu. Okay, good night and stay safe and stay well.